Welcome back. We finally get a chance to test this new Motiv Black Venom we've been looking forward to. If you like what we do, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and check us out on Patreon. First impressions, it's quite simple. I would say the Motiv Black Venom meets my expectations. Having said that, well, let's get into what my expectations were. And as you should know by now, I liked the Venom Shock, but didn't when it was first released. The cover was a little strong for the core, so it used to push me in too deep, and then it didn't have the strength to roll back up. That changed for me the second time I tested it years later. Primal Shock essentially amps the core up in the same cover, which makes it a little more effective for lower rev rate bowlers. With all that said, I struggled to clearly fit either ball in an arsenal category. It was a bit angular for mid control, but not really strong enough for strong control. So somewhere in between, in comes the Black Venom. And long story short, we finally have one that fits smack dab in the mid control category. Right out of the box, it felt like a mid strength ball. It really gave me a pretty simple, straightforward look, pretty much anywhere from 12 to 17 at the arrows. It has a nice balanced shape that has a little more, is a little more angular, much closer to banana, I would say, than hockey stick. Super enjoyable to toss with good carry. I continued to migrate in to see where the limits are, and it was very clear right around 19 it was done, so there really was no point in going any further. The cover finish at 4000 LSS, I would say, was a perfect matchup to make it mid control on this particular condition. All in all, it really seems to serve its purpose well. Now I want to give you a quick comparison to the Venom Shock, and you can immediately see how much earlier the Shock got into a roll. The Venom Shock also has clearly higher perceived down lane angle accordingly. I mean, it's kind of deceiving. Although Motiv describes the Black Venom as earlier and smoother on lane, it actually looks later and smoother. Also, looking at the Primal Shock, you can see, I would say, an overall heavier rolling ball that is a little earlier but not as snappy as the Venom Shock, but basically plays the same role essentially. So I always found the Turmoil MFS works better with some surface versus lane shine. That's on what's on the Shocks. Anyway, what I could say is the Black Venom is different enough to complement either the Primal or the Venom Shock. Are the names confusing you yet? Now, it's been a minute since I've tested anything two-handed given my hip replacement. However, it was pretty fun to toss the Black Venom with this style. The rounded shape is a benefit to your rev-dominant style since the hand already generates the angle. With that said, you can see that you do have to be careful with misses out since, yeah, I guess it can poop out a little bit. And again, with the style misses in, didn't really hold. I don't blame, not hitting misses on the ball. It's just more to show the characteristics of the ball. But ultimately, I think it's a nice balanced shape for a two-hander. All right, now Tyler's up, and you could see the Black Venom is fairly balanced banana shape. It's pretty even. He's got a very stable layout, longish pin, so we know it's not gonna really pop hard for him down lane. He's got a pretty simple, straightforward look somewhere around the second arrow. Normally he'd be covering more boards, but again, we have a very tame layout on this ball, and so this is to be expected. It has a very predictable and smooth response to friction, even while playing pretty close to the cliff, which is a nice feature. The interesting thing is, again, when you compare it to the Venom Shock, it's such a different shape. The Venom Shock is clearly earlier and boomier. So even while theoretically the Black Venom is supposed to be earlier and smoother, I would say it's a little paradoxical in that it's actually a little later and smoother. Next is Brian with the Black Venom, and he felt like he had an okay look. It wasn't spectacular per se, but I think this tends to be a challenge with the weaker core balls that have a little bit of a stronger cover for his style. They roll kind of okay, hit kind of okay, and he generally found an okay look. I am not saying anything special here, but what I will say is just, highlight a couple of nuggets. He had a really good light hit carry. Brian played fairly direct in general, and as the Black Venom didn't really have a ton of backhand for him, as you would expect, given we've already discussed the banana shape, and that's, sometimes even exacerbated more so for his style. Since he's playing close to the friction, he was hoping to use that, to get it to bounce a little harder and drive, but it really responded quite smoothly to the friction. And compared to the Venom shock, I mean, just as the rest of us saw, it starts earlier and kind of stands up harder. Also, a quick look at the Primal shock, and for Brian, that bigger core makes a much bigger difference. Let's wrap up with my final thoughts. I feel very good about having the Black Venom in my mid control part of the bag. Being an ASIM, you'll have to be a little bit more careful how you lay it out, but when you do it right, I would say it's not particularly obvious it's an ASIM. It has a smooth, controllable, nice arcing shape. Yes, it's a little more limited in terms of opening up the lanes relative to other balls, but this is going to be dependent on the bowler's rev rate and axis rotation. However, in my mind, that's not a problem for a good mid-control ball, which the Black Venom is.